Princess Bedtime Stories. Cinderella, My Perfect Wedding. Cinderella's dreams were coming true at last. With the help of her mouse friends, she had managed to race down the stairs just in time to try on the glass slipper the Grand Duke had brought. It proved that she was the girl the prince had met and fallen in love with at the royal ball. Now she and the prince were going to be married, and their brand new life together would soon begin. But first, there was a wedding to plan, and Cinderella didn't have the faintest idea where to begin. Idea of where to begin? Yeah, weddings can be like that. Prudence, who ran the castle household for the king, was happy to take charge. She sat with Cinderella and read off a long list of things that needed to be done for the wedding. "Excuse me," Cinderella said when Prudence paused for a moment, "but couldn't the prince and I just have a simple wedding?" Prudence frowned. "Cinderella, now that you are going to be a princess, you need to start thinking like one. This should be the grandest wedding the kingdom has ever seen." Are you sure about that, Prudence? Later on, the royal dressmaker arrived with several wedding gowns. The first gown Cinderella tried on was covered with bows and sashes and had a huge skirt. "The guests will mistake me for a present," she cried. "You look just like a princess," Prudence said. But Cinderella thought the dress was too fussy. "Do you think you could design something plainer?" she asked. "Plain and princess do not go together," Prudence said. The next day, Prudence and Cinderella visited the royal florist. He presented them with a bouquet of roses that was so big it looked more like a bush. "Do you have something a bit smaller?" Cinderella asked. "It's perfect," Prudence said. "You just have to know how to carry it." She grabbed the flowers and a bee flew out. Prudence screamed, and the bee stung her. Then she screamed even louder. Poor Prudence. It's no fun getting stung by a bee, is it? That afternoon, the mice found Cinderella all by herself in the garden. "Where's Bossy Lady?" asked Gus. "Poor Prudence," replied Cinderella. "She got quite a nasty bee sting. The royal physician says she has to stay in bed for the rest of the day." "But what about the wedding plans?" Jock asked. "I'll just have to take care of them myself," Cinderella declared. "Look at the size of this list. What do you think we should do first?" "Who's a-comin', Cinderella?" wondered Jock. "The guest list. Good idea, Jock." Well, let's see. "Well, of course all of you are invited," Cinderella replied. "And my fairy godmother, too. I wish she were here right now." Almost as fast as Cinderella made her wish, the fairy godmother appeared. All right. "I just love weddings," the fairy godmother said. And I'm sure everything you've picked out is wonderful." Cinderella admitted she hadn't started planning. "When is the wedding, my dear?" asked the fairy godmother. Gus counted on his fingers. "Tomorrow," he announced. "Oh my goodness, child," cried the fairy godmother. "We'd better get started." "Lots to do," Jock added. He and Gus showed Prudence's list to the fairy godmother. "We'll plan an absolutely magical wedding for you, dear," the fairy godmother gushed. "Now let's begin with the dress." She waved her wand, and Cinderella was instantly adorned in an elegant white gown. But the fairy godmother had forgotten something. It's beautiful, Cinderella said. But don't you think it needs a veil? Oh, yes. Every bride needs a veil. They do. Yep, yep, yep. The fairy godmother wasn't listening, though. She had already moved on to the next item. Invitations, she declared. In the blink of an eye, thousands of lovely cards sat in stacks around the room. Now we shall prepare the feast and make the cake, the fairy godmother announced. Cinderella changed back into her blue dress and followed the fairy godmother to the royal kitchen. Meanwhile, 3 of the mice lifted some scissors and cut a small piece of fabric from underneath Cinderella's wedding gown. Then they threaded needles, pulled out a box of tiny pearls, and began to make a veil. The rest of the mice each took a stack of cards to deliver. They didn't get very far before their plans were spoiled by Pom Pom, the castle cat. "Whew, close a call," Jock cried as he and Gus raced to the kitchen, where Cinderella was with the fairy godmother. "And now for the best part," the fairy godmother exclaimed. With one grand sweep of her wand, she created the biggest, fanciest cake Cinderella had ever seen. "What do you think?" the fairy godmother asked. "Prudence will love it," Cinderella said, trying to hide her disappointment. "And speaking of Prudence, I really should go see how she's feeling." "Poor child," the fairy godmother said after Cinderella had left. "I think all these wedding plans are too much for her." Jacques and Gus tugged at the fairy godmother's sleeve. Cinderella likes smaller things," Jacques told her. Gus pointed proudly to himself. "Like mice." All at once, the fairy godmother understood why Cinderella hadn't been thrilled. Exactly. Her wedding should be the way she wants it to be. Yep, yep, yep. The fairy godmother went to Cinderella's room a little later. "I'm afraid I may have gotten a bit carried away, my dear," she confessed. "Now tell me, what would the wedding of your dreams be like?" After listening to Cinderella, the fairy godmother began to perform her magic. With a wave of her wand, the veil was finished. Then the invitations were sent to a smaller group of people. "Now let's cut that cake down to size," the fairy godmother said with a twinkle in her eye. As they walked to the kitchen, Cinderella turned to the mice. "Thank you, my little friends," she said gratefully. "Anything for you, Cinderella," Jacques said. "Bibbidi, bobbidi, boo!" the fairy godmother cried as she pointed to the cake. It shrunk and shrunk until it was the size of a normal wedding cake. The next day, Cinderella got ready for her wedding. She wore a simple white gown, veil, and gloves. She carried a bouquet of garden roses that the mice had gathered for her. It was just as she had dreamed. But the king was about to escort her down the aisle. But as the king was about to escort her down the aisle, Cinderella looked down and gave a little cry of surprise. She wasn't wearing any shoes. What would she do? She looked at the mice and then down at her feet again. The fairy godmother followed the bride's gaze. "Good heavens, child!" she exclaimed. "You can't get married in your bare feet." She waved her wand, and suddenly Cinderella was wearing glass slippers. Just like she wore when she went to the ball. After the ceremony, there was a joyful party. It wasn't the king's grandest celebration, but it was the most special. Even Prudence was pleased. However, did you manage all of this? The prince asked Cinderella. The princess smiled and said, "With friends by your side, anything is possible." That's right, Cinderella. That is right. What would the wedding of your dreams be like? Let me know in the comments below. See you later. Bye.